The superpower that every citizen has is the ability to control where they spend their time, money, and attention. By focusing these on supporting local businesses, you are having a profound impact on your friends, your family, and your local community. So if you want to change the world, you can start with buying local. Welcome back to everyone to Buying Local. I'm your host, Mike Nelson here, joined today by Dan Breeyear, old friend, and now a client too. You guys are a community partner with Glens Falls TODAY. Really, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Oh my God, thank you so much for supporting us. So excited to have Dan on. He is the owner and purveyor of the Eden Center for Integrative
Yes.
Integrative Care here in Glens Falls, and you guys have been growing like crazy. I think we had you on, what was it, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and even then you were busy, but you continue to see all this growth, and so I'm really excited to hear about what you guys have going on, what's fueling all that growth, and you've got new offerings and just so much stuff going on. So where to begin?
The growth has been remarkable. I think since last time we talked, we've added another 3 therapists. I'm not sure if our provider had started by then, but we do have a new nurse practitioner.
Yeah. I think that's new too. Yeah.
So started with 4 up to 30, I think here now. 30 overall.
30 therapists?
No, just total staff.
Total staff.
18 therapists, I believe.
Wow.
Yep. 4 med providers.
Now, so
2 nurses.
Help me and the listeners understand. So you have 18 therapists. Mm-hmm. They're not all doing the same type of therapy.
No. So my goal with this was to be able to walk out of my office and place a client with who they needed, who best fit their needs, whether that's pediatric trauma, whether that's somebody just in need of general cognitive behavioral therapy. I have an art therapist here, the whole gamut, dialectical behavioral therapy, somebody who specializes just in children, somebody who does marriage, the whole family, that kind of thing. So the goal is to be able to address the person's need without having to refer them elsewhere where they may sit for 3 months and not get better.
That's amazing. So it's really, I really hate to use the word one-stop shop because it's terrible and it's so beat into the ground at this point. But it's just, no matter what, if you're having some sort of issue where therapy is quite possibly a solution, you have one for most people, is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, in this instance, the cliche is a reality. So the one-stop shop is okay, and that was that was the mindset.
Yeah.
So also, it can't be understated to be able to communicate verbally with somebody doing therapy when I'm doing my side of things, whether that is the person's health or medicine or a combination of the two of them. If they're having a problem, especially, those 2 individuals or the team in general, be able to communicate in that way is in the best interest of the client, ultimately. So, and
then you said you have a nurse practitioner now. You have a couple of nurses, and help me understand what they do here.
So Shannon has been here. She does more of the adult side of things, and she focuses on people with substance abuse history.
Okay.
I do children all the way up through the lifespan, so more focused on I'm having pediatrics. I have a lot of the hormone replacement arm. I have a lot of the functional medicine, hormone replacements and nutritional assessments, that kind of thing. Jan is our newest addition. She comes from a family nurse practitioner background. She got her doctorate, I believe, from Stony Brook and was the head of the Capital Regions Nurse Practitioner Association. So she's bringing the health background into the psychiatry realm. So she's doing, I think she's doing across the lifespan too. More so adolescence into adulthood, I believe, is what she's had so far. My registered nurses here, they'll be in charge of doing things like ketamine administration. They do a lot of the injections, the IVs, nutraceutical IVs, things like that. They'll use the hyperbaric oxygen chamber.
Because I'd imagine things like that, you really do need to have someone that has some medical knowledge, right?
Yes. Yeah. When you're dealing, especially with something like ketamine, it's an anesthetic by class. So you don't want a medical assistant doing that. You want to make sure it's the highest licensure under the supervision of a practitioner. Yeah, utilizing that sort of stuff. So, a variety of experiences, backgrounds, but they're filling the.
And you're also an NP, right, of psychiatry, though.
Yes. Yep.
Right. Now, so I know people listening are like, that's a dumb question, Mike. But like, we only think of nurse practitioners in like the health, like the medical field. Mm-hmm. Not that psychiatry is not, but it's a different type of NP. Is that?
It's specialized.
Do you have to go through all the nursing stuff as well?
Yeah, we go to the same track up until they diverge as far as psychopharmacology versus. So we do a basic pharmacology and we do specialized psychopharmacology. I think we actually have to do more hours because it's specialty care.
Sure.
I think people in the medical side all start in family, and then they can specialize from there into, cardiac health or gerontology, whatever they do. But ours is a specialty track from the start.
So, so a little bit ago you said hormone therapy, right? And I know, like we were talking about this before because I'm a middle-aged man at this point, right? And like, excuse me. So is that like testosterone? I don't even know what the word is. Augmentation, supplementation. Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Testosterone replacement therapy.
That's it. That's it.
People, BHRT, bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, you may see it listed as too. Testosterone is one of them. We have plenty of female clients that will augment their own with, estrogens, progesterones, and testosterone.
Okay.
Which is an interesting point we should talk about after with the female side of things, because it may seem odd. Started here basically with the males, because in psychiatry, how many people with low testosterone present as depressed?
Well, right. That's what I keep running into this with people that I know that are taking testosterone replacement therapy, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And the reasons of why they're doing it. Some of them were, a lot of us think it's like, oh, so I can have big muscles, but it's not just about big muscles, I guess.
And that's been a challenge to overcome. That's the steroid stigma, I'll call it.
Yeah.
Where you think if you're using testosterone replacement, you're looking to get jacked in the gym or something. That's not. We don't do those doses for one, and we do it based on blood work and how your levels are. A lot of my clients will come from primary care who doesn't seem to want to deal with it, and that's okay. They're dealing with a lot. They're dealing with the flu and pink eye and general health and all that, and that requires a little bit of expertise and a little bit of monitoring. So they don't want to do that, and a lot of people can't get a referral to urology, and what we found is the challenge is they're using this really antiquated lab level system that looks at 19-year-olds to 39-year-olds, and they give you a reference range in between. And as anybody as male knows, that your testosterone, how you feel, differs greatly from when you're 19 to 39 years old. So anybody that's not clinically low on that scale, regardless how they feel, they tend not to want to treat. Insurance won't pay for it, and they won't want to treat it. So who's to say somebody doesn't have the right to feel better if there's an identified deficiency? And we're also classifying people as generic, which I hate to do because nobody's universally, you may feel good at 800, I may feel good at 500.
Right. I mean, everybody's biology is kind of subtly different, right?
Right. And I'm using those numbers I threw out are lab reference ranges.
Sure, yeah.
So, what may be good for you is not good for me, which is not good for the next person, whatever. So there's a little bit of subjectiveness to it where, you look at how someone feels. You also look at their reference ranges, their history. And here's some examples I'll give when I talk to people about this. If you're a wrestler and you're cutting weight, you crush your endocrine system. You crush your adrenals just by dehydrating yourself. So that's somebody you look at, that person must be, have great testosterone. Or these long distance endurance athletes that just deplete their body and just beat their body up. Think like David Goggins or somebody like that.
Yeah, that guy's nuts.
Yeah. So
I kind of want to be like that guy. Yeah. I want to be able to run as long as that guy runs.
Yeah. He's different.
Yes, he is.
But somebody like that is going to end up on the lower end of it because they just deplete their body down to nothing. Anybody that's had an opioid problem tends, for whatever reason, probably along those same lines, beats their body up, and they end up always being lower. Heavy drinkers, same thing. So,
and I also keep running into this. I don't know. We'll call it a statistic, for lack of a better word. But I keep running into this information. Let's say that I don't know if you have any insight into this, but I keep reading about how men boys, men, whatever, males in our population are something like 40% lower testosterone levels than we had like 20 years ago. Or I don't know if those are the correct numbers, but something along those lines.
Roughly, I think, depending where your sourcing comes from, they vary, but pretty much consistently they're lower. Let's call it that. And there's a variety of reasons for that. Nutrition is a big one.
Okay.
The food is terrible. Everybody knows that.
You mean all the
additives, ingredients, chemicals.
That could be a whole other show we should do at some point in time, because I keep reading about like endocrine disruptors that are in our food and all this other stuff, and I'm just, it's crazy to me.
How many adolescent boys have been given melatonin? You know?
Oh yeah, yeah. I just actually read an article the other day about what melatonin does for your body, and it's not good, and you should not be taking it.
No, and the potencies vary widely, up to 100 times, depending on where you're getting it from. And also, we're not nocturnal. Why aren't you sleeping? So everybody ignores the underlying, and it's back to that old medicine to fix things.
Yeah.
So,
just treating symptoms instead of working on the cause.
100%. So nutrition's terrible. You can spend 3 hours in a grocery store flipping food labels to try to find out what you should have. Mm-hmm. It's really, really difficult. Where I talk to the parents of children about the red and blue dyes and yellow dyes and all that. They're petroleum-based products for one, so you want to feed your kids crude oil, go ahead.
Right.
Your red Gatorade may have red 40 here, but in Europe it's beet juice because it's illegal to do that there. So it's all about. It's another show, obviously, but we can.
I know it's so funny you say that because I just was
the monetization in the food industry. And
oh my God! I just read a thing on foods that are legal here that are illegal basically in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
One of them being milk because of RBGH, recombinant bovine growth hormone, which is the chemical they give cows to make them think their bodies think they're pregnant so that they produce milk.
And then the antibiotics to keep them,
and then they get they're sick all the time, so they have to load them with all these drugs. And so, you go to most countries on the planet, they would, American milk's illegal.
Yeah, and if you gave a calf, whole milk from the store, they die. So
it's crazy.
It's not good. They've adulterated the milk, and
I know. Now I've brought us down a rabbit hole talking about food, but
we'll circle it back around to the hormones. But yes, the endocrine disruptors, as you say, that's exactly what happens. So. Throw in stress that had not been previously there, social media, a 24-hour news cycle, things like that. There are people where, stress and anxieties are part of your fight or flight system at the core. You have those to be afraid of the bear in the woods that's going to try to eat you. You remember the smell, you remember where it was, that to run, that kind of thing. We've modernized that to... Can I pay my mortgage? What's going on in the Middle East? Who's winning the election?
And so all this is having an effect on testosterone levels?
Well, it affects your stress hormone levels. In the word, and there's hormone. So cortisol goes up, inflammatory load goes up, neurotransmitters, when we talk about depression, they go down, so you feel depressed and things like that. People get stressed. And same thing happens with testosterone and hormone dysregulation too. So throw in gut health. It's all interrelated system.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it leads you down the path of problems. So, how many people present, I'm middle-aged, I'm getting a little bit older, going through something in life, and I feel lethargic. I just feel down. I don't feel, my sex drive's down. I may have a little ED going on. My hair's falling out, and things like that. All those classic low testosterone symptoms.
Yeah.
Unless you put it all together and have somebody throwing feedback, you may not recognize what's going on. You may just think, I'm depressed. And if you go to GP and just say, I'm feeling down and lethargic, they might throw a Prozac at you.
Right, throw a pill at you.
Because modern medicine is pill to fix. It's medicine to fix. Yeah. Here's a problem, here's the fix. I don't look at why. I don't ask 3 questions deep to figure out what may be going on there. Blood work is another one. Beyond the basic is just too much to ask sometimes.
Yeah.
And we need those people doing those jobs. It's just they're limited in scope and timid with what they want to do, and that's okay for them. You can't tell anybody how to do things, but there's a big gap, I guess, as far as care goes. I heard Dana White from the UFC talking about, I'm never going to go to a doctor for my general health again. Ever. If I have a heart problem, I'll go to a cardiologist. If I need a surgery, I'll go to a surgeon. But I'm never going to talk to a doctor about a regular doctor about my general health because they just don't know. And he's not off because I think they don't get much nutritional education.
Sure.
And they're focused on this traditional model of medicine to fix. Here's a problem, here's the fix. Not the investigative aspects of root cause
Figuring out what's wrong.
Yeah, and that takes time and it takes resources, and not everybody has it.
Yeah.
You know? So
it's unfortunate that, sounds like an access problem, right? Like not everybody has access to that level of care.
it is, and it's kind of how this place fits in, because being psychiatry, what can be classified under psychiatry? Pretty much everything. We just talked about it.
Yeah.
Your low testosterone mimics depression. Your low vitamin D because you live in New York and it's dark at 3 o'clock soon and you just don't get out in the sun.
Yeah, everyone has a vitamin D deficiency.
Right.
Yeah.
And it presents in the same way, and that impacts your thyroid, which impacts your brain. And
And so to kind of steer us into another line, but that kind of segues into some of the IV stuff that you guys do, right? So you guys have a lot of, I don't know if it's a lot, but you guys have intravenous treatments, infusion treatments of things like vitamin D. And like I think we were talking about before the show, right? We've got cold and flu season, and COVID's got a resurgence. And maybe talk to us about how those solutions help with that problem.
Yeah, the nutraceutical drips, we'll call them. So there's a variety of them. Nutraceuticals.
Nutraceuticals.
Yeah.
Give me some of that.
Right.
Put that in a bottle, right?
So vitamin D can be an injectable or added to one of those. But, there a lot of the more popular ones. Myers cocktail is one people may have heard of. Dr. Myers was a doctor in Florida that kept all the old people alive.
Is that the hangover one?
No, different. This was a proprietary blend, and he died, and the secret sauce was lost, but they recreated it. Essentially what they thought it was. That was the old person longevity IV in Florida way back in, I think it was the 1960s or something. So Myers cocktail, it's a combination of amino acids and minerals and vitamins and things like that. So that's one. And, hangover one, what is a hangover? Dehydration, and you flushed out all your electrolytes and things like that.
And blood glucose.
So, stabilizing that sort of thing. Glutathione is a big one that's added. That's the master antioxidant. So if you're having inflammation or problems, and that can help, hormone stabilization. That's a big one.
Will the glutathione help my feet? I've got diagnose me here, doc. So I've got this situation. Every time I sit down, like right now we're sitting having this. I'm going to stand up. You're going to watch me limp out of here when I stand up, because if I sit down for like more than 10 minutes, every time I get up, my feet hurt. Am I just an old man?
I don't know.
It's definitely a circulation thing. I don't know.
There's some things for that, for circulation, for sure. Yeah. Lumbar kinase is one. It'd be one for circulation. There's another one I'm trying to think of. It's in that same realm. They stimulate blood flow and reduce inflammation in your circulatory system. You could just be old also.
46, Dan.
Nattokinase, that's what I was trying to think of. Nattozyme, nattokinase and lumbar kinase. So these are elements that you can take in supplement form to kind of improve and increase circulatory system.
Okay. All right, we'll revisit this offline.
Sure. So the IVs are great. We're getting into cold and flu season. You have the vitamin D, and zinc, and vitamin C, and things like that. Building your immune system is the best defense against, cold, flu.
Well, it's that preventative measure, right? That's
exactly.
Again, I read a whole bunch of, when we were knee deep in COVID, I kept reading about how specific doctors were talking about the importance of your vitamin D levels and how that helped you fight off COVID and how important that is.
Yeah. And we saw those numbers of the mortality numbers linked to people that were deficient.
Yeah.
Yeah, who may be, not of the Anglo-Saxon descent, but maybe like, African Americans, I think the city had a much higher rate. And if you think of how vitamin D is absorbed, and if you're living in the Northeast and your skin tone is not such where, that level of direct sunlight would be beneficial to you, you're going to need to supplement.
You're going to need,
and they do better when they do it. Is, we're getting into this time of year where I'll have my patients pump up their vitamin D supplementation. That usually starts in September. And what we see with that is a decrease in seasonal affect depression, where those people, you get sad in the February, January months where it's dark at 3 and it's cold and dreary. You find if your vitamin D levels are up, those instances tend to go down, and at least the severity does too. I equate it to like having a house plant in your window and moving into an interior door. Thing's going to do worse. We're here because of the sun, so if you're not out there because it's freezing, you got to supplement. And some people use the lights and things like that. But
Well, I know there's going to be some people listening to you. They're going to be like, well, I'm just going to drink some milk, or I'm going to go grab some a multivitamin with some vitamin D. Do we want to talk about bioavailability and the difference between taking like a pill form of vitamin D versus an intravenous solution of vitamin D?
Yeah, not everybody needs an IV to do it, but what you get in milk and even a standard multi is probably not enough for here. I recommend people to take a minimum of 2,500 international units a day. People that had been deficient that I've identified through blood work, around the September period, I start to give them prescriptions or advise over-the-counter at 5,000 international units, at least through the winter. And a prescription would be a 50,000 once a week.
Oh, wow.
With food for absorption.
Now, is vitamin D one of the vitamins that you can't like overdose? Like you can't get too much of it?
You can.
You can.
You can, absolutely. And you can impact your calcium, too. So if you have a calcium problem, you might want to consult your physician about supplementing or anything like that. But these are my general recommendations as a person of good health.
Yeah. I just always wonder because I know like isn't like vitamin E maybe there's one that you can't. I think there's certain vitamins I believe, and maybe I'm wrong.
Let's use B12.
Yeah.
There's an established range, but a toxicity level but I see people come in here with elevated B12 that are anxious. So there's ramifications of it, and it's person by person.
Okay.
So putting the black and white labels of ranges needs to be subjective.
That's a good point, yeah.
High level in the lab range is 100 for the vitamin D, and 200 is your toxicity. So if you're taking 50,000 a few times a week, you probably approach that.
You're going to get close to it, yeah.
Some people absorb really well. I've had people that take 2,500 get it to 100. It's hard in New York, but they're really good absorbers of it. So it's best to do it under guidance, with blood work especially. But I think in that 2,000 range in New York, 2,500 range, most people are good. And it would be very hard to ever get toxic.
Okay.
And you feel better in that 70, 80, 90, 100 range anyways, and notably, especially if you're somebody prone to seasonal affect depression. And just circling back to the hormone conversation, I have people come in here that are vampire level vitamin D. Their testosterone's in the female range, and if they're for a male, and they're not sleeping well and they're overweight. We get them doing nutritional modifications so the weight comes down. Sometimes medicines if it's warranted. Everybody knows the Ozempics and the Wegovy's and things like that by now. Those sorts of GLP-1 medicines.
It's amazing though how much food has to do with how you feel.
Yeah.
Like it's such a drug or a poison or something that's helpful depending on what you're eating and how much. But
absolutely. Then we get into the hormone replacements with vitamin D, and people make remarkable differences. They shed weight, they feel good, the mood's better
just by taking vitamin D.
And I mean, those people that also need hormone replacements too. If you're on lower end testosterone, I make you to the level of what you were at 21, 22, you feel better.
I bet.
Your sex drive is going to be better.
I would like to feel
your
like
relationships
I did when I was 22.
are going to be better. The old myth about aggressiveness is that what I've heard it put, it'll make you more of what you already are. If you're a jerk, you might be more of one. If you're competitive,
I'm not sure I can be any more of a jerk than I already am, Dan.
It brings your competitive nature back. Everything you think about when you were younger and feeling vibrantly male.
Well, and you actually, so you bring up a good point, right? Like, so again, I've talked to quite a few people recently. It just seems to be all around me where people are talking about they're on hormone replacement therapy, taking testosterone, and those are the concerns, right? Like, am I going to be like roid rage, right? Am I going to, or the other one, I was having a conversation the other night and the guy was talking, he's like, well, aren't you afraid of prostate cancer? Right? Because his understanding was that testosterone was basically fuel for prostate cancer. And, again, I didn't.
Yeah. And that literature has been out there. I equate it to the estrogen for females, which is a little more based in fact than I think even the prostate cancer one is. It all depends on when you start it, what your genetic predisposition. If you have a family history of prostate cancer, you might want to think about that. But it's not something that's been proven beyond a factual doubt. The most common side effects that I discuss in visit with people are increase in estrogen, because if you have fat tissue, it can take testosterone that we're giving you and convert it. So we monitor you for that.
So even if you're a guy.
Yep. It's the fat cells. They convert. It's called aromatization. So they take the testosterone that we're giving you and they convert it over to estrogen.
Is this how you end up like Bob from Fight Club? Is that
Bob from Fight Club?
Remember
yep.
Bob?
Yes.
Meatloaf.
Yeah. So I give everybody a supplement called DIM. It's a combination of supplements to basically regulate the other hormones.
Okay.
And I test them every 3 months, depending.
Yeah.
6 weeks to 3 months, depending on who you are and what the history is. The other one are cardiovascular problems that people talk about. That's very rare. Sometimes you can get an increase in hemoglobin and hematocrit levels. So think of your blood getting thicker.
Mm-hmm.
This is a way to think about it. So we would look at that, reduce your dose. If you got to an uncomfortable level, you donate blood, and it goes down.
Interesting.
I've seen that twice. It's not common at all, but I like to give people the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Make an informed decision. Here's what could happen. Here's if it does happen, how we'll deal with it. And
it sounds like you are monitoring things pretty closely too at the same time, right?
So if we do pellet therapy, for those people who don't know what that is, it's these kind of look like Tic Tacs, and they are inserted similar to what like a female's birth control would be, but they go under the fat layer. If you're looking at a pair of jeans above your back pocket but below your belt in that little area out towards the hip, so you're not sitting on it. So you don't feel them, you don't see them, and they last for 4.5 to 5 months. And we were on the conversation of side effects. What I've found is with injections, you get a big jump, a big spike, and then it'll, by the end of the week, it'll be back down.
Mm-hmm.
Pellets therapy, where it'll take 2 weeks to build, but then it's consistent for about 4.5 to 5 months, and there's no injections, there's no maintenance. It's kind of there, and you forget about it for 4.5 or 5 months, and you feel good, and your levels are consistent, and your side effect lower, the potential is lower. It's about a 30-minute office procedure. So, and it's cost equivalent to replacement therapy too. So it's not really any more money. It's just a different option for people.
Interesting.
If you're a busy professional, and you can't get in here for a weekly shot, or some people do twice weekly shots.
Mm-hmm.
So it's difficult.
And that's all based around what your blood levels are, what your testosterone levels are, and to getting that up to a
Optimal.
Optimal. Okay, I was going to say industry standard. Not that there's an industry standard, but like optimal range for your biology.
No industry standard. Optimal for you.
Okay, that's cool.
And people may question, what if I want to take more? Well, you're not going to take more unless you're of the size and the symptom to need more. And people who've gotten more and it was too much, they come back and say, I just yelled at my mother. I yelled at, I'm snappy. And that's not what anybody wants. You're not doing this for that. You're doing it to feel better. Mm-hmm. Nobody feels better being irritable.
Yeah.
So, we look at your size and how you feel over that. The pellets in particular, that information from your lab is put into a calculator, computer calculator, and it spits out your dosage, what you should have for a loading dose those 2 weeks or it's building, and then, what your dosage will be for the 4.5 or 5 months.
It's amazing.
Yep, for optimization.
So moving off the hormone therapy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Men and women for that, though.
Men and, well, so I guess before we leave it, then you said for women, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, and we were talking about this before, is why I throw that at you.
Yeah.
The female, I think most of my pellet clients are actually female. And when I did my training in Florida, it was all cliche 50-something women in tennis skirts living their best lives in Florida, and they were all doing pellet therapy. And
for testosterone.
Can be estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, but the majority of them were doing testosterone. Now, there was a big government study years ago where estrogen was linked to cancer. Mm-hmm. So people got scared off of estrogen. The problem with that study was it was done in postmenopausal women, and the estrogen receptor sites shift postmenopausally. So that's where the cancer risk came in. If you do it premenopausally or perimenopausally, then that is not as true. You can get the same benefits from estrogen as you can a man gets from testosterone. But if people have a family history or they're scared from that, or they, they'll get into the testosterone. So a woman's range is anywhere from 0 to 30 or 40, depending on the lab you're looking at. They're pushing women 100 to 150 now on the lab level, and they're getting the same benefits as men. So sex drive goes up, energy levels goes up, just drive, competitiveness, the whole thing that a man gets. We just talked about whether men want to do it. Disadvantage and most common question: will I grow a beard? No.
My question was going to be: is this going to give them a mustache?
They will have to shave more, not their face, but legs.
Just what they would normally shave.
Whatever they would normally shave. Yeah. The guy that did my training was a genius. He would give them the pellets on one side of the building. The other side of the building was the laser hair removal. So he had.
He was a genius.
Yes,
he is a genius.
Yes,
that's hilarious.
Make it grow and take it off.
Oh man!
But they were wonderful. They were feeling wonderful. And actually, a woman came here and told me about it. I wasn't even aware, and badgered me, and then I went and got the training because there was nowhere to get it done. She had gone up near the Canadian border, I think, once, and then down to Vermont, and hadn't had the same success. So,
is there any open space in this building for laser hair removal?
There might be. There might be. But yeah, I mean, male and female, especially. So, I just had a conversation with somebody this morning about doing it a female, and I have 2 insertions later. So
that's interesting.
Both female.
Wow.
Yep. So
I never would have thought that.
Right.
So tell us about some of the other things that you got going on. So I know that you're starting some groups up, different types of groups. Tell us about that.
Yep. So the first one, we're doing ketamine therapy. I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, very superficially. We're doing ketamine therapy, and that is for resistant depression. It can be for trauma, that sort of thing. A lot of those indications where people have chronic issues.
And we should probably mention too that when I know people hear that and they're like, ketamine, like, isn't that the horse tranquilizer? But this is like small dose.
It's a horse tranquilizer. It's Special K.
Mm-hmm.
It's
all those things that people
it's an anesthesia. It's an anesthetic.
But that's what it's designed for, right? Is to be an anesthetic.
Right. And actual ketamine is only indicated for anesthesia use. There's intranasal pharmaceutical ketamine. It's labeled Spravato as the brand name. That's S-ketamine, ES, not ketamine. So should make the distinction. We can do intravenous ketamine, which is compounded through compounding for they basically make it, which is the same stuff as the anesthetic, just in much lower doses.
Small dose, yes. Right?
Yep.
And what is it, like mood disorders, right? Like PTSD, like
treatment-resistant depression.
Yeah.
So if you're a depressed person who's had no relief from multiple antidepressant trials, maybe you've tried shock therapy, ECT, electroconvulsive shock therapy, and TMS, it hasn't worked, and you want to try you're at the end of the rope, so to speak. We can do an intravenous dosage of ketamine we do it 1 or 2 times a week for about 6 weeks, and people get better. People get really better fast. And there's a lot of literature out there. They're giving it ERs in some places. Some people commit suicidal, and they'll be able to discharge them within 24 hours.
Wow.
After a ketamine infusion. And it lasts a very long time, too. Where we're taking the next step is one of my psychotherapists here. She's going to start doing ketamine-assisted therapy, where you're going to be under the influence of ketamine, we'll say, and she will do psychotherapy with you. So some of those walls you've built for yourself are going to come down a little bit. So you may be able to get deeper into, what's actually underlying and kind of driving some of the depression and things like that.
It's crazy. I actually just read, every time I talk to you, I find out is that I do a lot of reading.
Yeah, that's good.
Because I just read an article about not ketamine, but couples therapy using psilocybin.
Yeah.
But same thing, because and that's what maybe triggered me to think about it, was that it helps to kind of bring some of those walls down that you wouldn't normally be able to break through.
Yeah, and a lot of people are doing that work. We just can't do it legally yet here.
Right.
Hopefully, I would say in the next few years we will with the psilocybin. It's along the same lines, different pathways. Ketamine works on glutamate in the brain, which is by volume the biggest excitatory neurotransmitter that we have. It's about 50% by volume and 80% by excitatory action. We've just ignored it for 60 years and focused on what they call monoamines. That's dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin. The monoamine hypothesis, it's called, where it's viewed as you're lacking one of those 3 things, and because you are, we'll give you one of these drugs like Prozac, Zoloft, or one of those that will increase that artificially. But that doesn't work for majority of people. 25%, I think, are the numbers. There was a study called STAR-D, I think it was in 2006, published in 2008, where it looked at trials of antidepressants and I think the numbers were something like, if you failed the first one, you're 40 or 60% less likely to be helped. 80% by the time you get to 4. They tested 4. People had 4 antidepressant trials. And if you had tried 4 antidepressants, you were like 80% unlikely to basically respond to them.
Wow.
That's all we had for 60 years. Because we were ignoring the biggest part of the pie, which is the glutamate, and focusing on the monoamines. So there's some new oral medicines out there. There's ketamine out there now to help with that. But psilocybin, as you mentioned, is a new and exciting one that works on the default mode network in your brain, and that breaks down walls. And you hear people talked about ibogaine and psilocybin and DMT and all that sort of those psychedelics. And if you think about it, those were used by indigenous people for a long time for the ceremonies,
peyote,
ayahuasca and things like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not new information, but it's...
Oh my God, I read a whole book on ayahuasca.
We're getting back to, things that we used to use that work.
Yeah.
Just have to cut the red tape of legality out of it. We'll get there.
So, and I'm trying not to keep you here all morning because I could talk about all this stuff. And I know that we covered a couple of things on our last time we recorded the podcast, but... So you talked about the ketamine, and I don't know, we started with the groups, but you're doing different kinds, right? Not just the...
Yeah, on that same person doing the ketamine therapy, she's going to start incorporating a wilderness therapy where she goes out in, the grounding in nature.
Yeah.
Not in an office, going out and doing therapy in nature.
There's real information out there about the effect of being surrounded by trees has on your hormone levels.
Touching trees,
taking
your shoes off. Yeah, she's gonna,
all of a sudden, I the whole tree hugger thing just has new meaning.
Yeah, and we checked with people's insurance. They're not limited to an office as long as you're doing it.
As long as you're doing it, yeah.
Right, yeah. So we went through all that, the waivers, and so she's going to start doing it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, one of my other therapists is going to do an addiction group, which is very much needed. It's not going to be relegated to addiction as we think of it as far as drug use. People are addicted to a lot of different things, and that can range from video games to food to sex,
gambling,
anything that is a positive engrainment of a negative behavior. Mm-hmm. So if you do something over and over again, you're going to ingrain it in your brain as being good. We think about the OCD person who flips the light switch before they exit a room. At some level, at some point, that made that person feel comfortable or calm or safe. And they ingrain that as a behavior positively, but it's ultimately negative because the further it progresses down the addiction pathway, like anything else does, it paralyzes them. Mm-hmm. The eating disorder people. The person starved themselves because of the body image distortion, and they felt good about it at some point. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to break, just like any other drug. Only that one doesn't cost anything. There's no police. They just have to not eat.
That's crazy.
So it's deep along those addiction pathways. So that group is coming next. They'll start next month. Wilderness therapy, I think she's starting this month, and then the assisted therapy also later this month. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, getting it going.
And are you guys doing any cold water stuff?
So I buy my toys in December.
Okay.
I'm looking to get one, and there's an awesome, it's like a sauna pod.
Okay.
It incorporates sauna up to 180, red light therapy, exercise with oxygen. You familiar with what that is?
Yep.
So you put on the O2, and you can do some band work while you're laying in the thing. Also a little bit of massage too. So I plan to get that in December with the cold, so you can do hot and cold. And
I've been geeking out about cold water immersion stuff recently, as everybody is, it seems like. But
that literature is real. The studies are real. Anybody doing it makes you feel great. And it all goes back to the inflammatory load. I was talking about the monoamine hypothesis. We know that's flawed because we can deplete a healthy person of all their monoamines and they don't necessarily get depressed. Whereas if I gave you something inflammatory like interleukin-1, you're immediately depressed.
That's interesting.
Immediately.
It's amazing how many things come back to inflammation, right?
And that's the pathway. So cold therapy, good. Even sauna therapy is really good for
or alternating.
Yeah.
I just read a book called Winter Swimming from a PhD in Norway, I think she was, and she was talking about the benefits of swimming in cold water. But then also part of her study, her thesis was cold water immersion and like sauna and alternating the two, and they came up with like all these very specific numbers. Like
the hormonic effect, it's called.
Like
just the right amount of stress, the good amount of stress.
The good amount of stress, yeah.
And if you force yourself to, if you do hot then cold, you have to reheat, so you get the caloric burn, and you're forcing
the brown fat deposits are increased, and
Yep.
and your blood sugar and glucose, like all these crazy things. It's
2.5x release of dopamine. If you're doing 13 minutes a week, I think is the cold numbers.
It might be 13.
Yeah.
I was thinking 11, but it might be 13.
Like that, yeah.
And then hot was like 27 minutes or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And
but people have limited amounts of time. So I found that pod that could do a lot of different things at once. So I thought that would be a good idea. Cold, you're doing 3 minutes. So you're in and out of here in 45 minutes. It's great. And then, secondary exercise with oxygen units. So that's what I'm looking at for end of this year and the next year.
Mm-hmm.
I have a sound bed that should be delivered next month.
What is a sound bed?
So it's a bed with acoustics built into it. So vibration therapy, kind of, we talked about being in tune with nature, but so everybody generates their own sound frequency. So you can do different protocols for that.
That's interesting.
Just help balance you out.
You know what's really crazy about some of this stuff? Obviously, for people that know me know that I've been kind of a part of the yoga community for years.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a lot of like out there stuff, right? But all the stuff that I've been seeing in that community for years is now like coming to the forefront of science. I've been in like song bowl rooms where they did, actually I can't remember what her name is, but Lemon Tree Yoga. I don't even know if they're still around, but years ago she did this like song bowl immersion where you're literally sitting there. It was intense, like the vibrations, and like Kristen, my fiance, owns Yoga Mandali in Saratoga. And they do, I think it's like every Tuesday, they do a gong therapy where they're literally like all these, it's like 60 gongs, and they're doing all these different things, and just all those sound vibrations it's intense, man.
I was in Puerto Rico and I came across one just by chance, and we were doing it outside. It was like a gathering. I kind of sat in and it was like, whoa, you feel it. It's intense, right?
Yeah.
It's a great word for it. But yeah, exactly what you said with the yoga community though. So we talked about sauna, and they test the impact of hot yoga on the inflammatory and antidepressant realm. It's remarkable.
Yeah.
There's a doctor.
That's why people love it, and they keep going back, man.
There's a doctor from the University of Wisconsin. His name's Charles Raison. He did a study where they actually they put rectal probes in people doing hot yoga to measure core temperature, and it gets up. It mimics like an hour in a hot sauna, and the antidepressant mood effects were remarkable. So.
I would just like to give a shout out to the brave men and women that were these subjects in that study.
Yes. Yep. Anybody wants to give that a shot?
Holy moly.
Mike's taking the data.
Oh, amazing. Well, listen, I don't want to keep you. I know we're creeping up on an hour that I've had you on the mics, but if people want to learn more about Eden Center, how do they find you?
The EdenCareCenter.com. We're on Facebook at the same, Instagram and Twitter. We're on with community partner with you now.
Yes, sir.
I'll be putting out some blog articles on various topics that we find of interest, and then come visit us here on 84 Broad Street.
84 Broad, Glens Falls. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's online information, intake forms if anybody's interested. And they can find all that at the EdenCareCenter.com.
That's cool. I'm always excited to have you on the show and have these conversations, because I'm just a geek about all this stuff, man. It's amazing, amazing stuff. And
it's easy to go longer. So.
Yeah, right. But more than anything, though, I mean, people, I really hope listening understand about the amount of good that you guys are able to do here for people, and that really, at least from what I've seen so far, seems to be your focus, is really helping people. And
the one thing I did want to say, we touched on this in. Maybe you can help me get more information about this at some point. I'm going to do a community education day where I loop in providers from other offices. I want to bring in some people from functional medicine and nutrition and psychiatry, maybe some family medicine people too. And I want to do a day where community people can come and get more information on some of this stuff, see what's out there. But also, I feel like the professionals don't network enough in these ways. And I think as I said, it's important for me to be able to talk to my therapist on the ground. It's important for other professionals to build a relationship in this way so we can best help the clients that we have. You can't be an expert in everything.
Yeah.
We have a broad scope here, but we need other people to be doing similar things and be of like mind for people to really get better. So I think doing things like this would benefit the community and professionals at large. So upcoming later this fall.
Maybe we should put Trisha over the chamber on the spot by saying it on the podcast.
Yes,
This
Trisha.
sounds like a great way to bring the Adirondack community or the Adirondack chamber into play, and that's the kind of stuff that they do. So,
And she's always a great resource. So
yeah, they are. They're amazing.
Definitely can get with her on that. So,
yeah.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yeah, Dan, thanks again for coming on the show, and
Thank you.
and thank you everyone for putting up with some of my awful jokes that I continue to make, regardless if people like them or not. So, but again, thanks for tuning in each week and listening to our shows and learning more about the local businesses and business owners in our community. Again, if you want to change the world, buy local. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
The superpower that every citizen has is the ability to control where they spend their time, money, and attention. By focusing these on supporting local businesses, you are having a profound impact on your friends, your family, and your local community. So if you want to change the world, you can start with buying local.